Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to tackle a really big question from Malcolm Gladwell's book, Talking to Strangers. Why are we so incredibly bad at understanding people we don't know?
So to really get this, we've got to start with a story, and it begins with something that happens every single day, a routine traffic stop.
Step out of the car. Just 4 words. But these 4 words, spoken by a police officer to a woman named Sandra Bland, are the spark that ignites a complete disaster. And that's really the heart of it, isn't it? How does something so normal go so horribly wrong? This is the exact question that drives Gladwell's entire book. Why are we so bad at understanding strangers? So here's Gladwell's big idea. The problem isn't the stranger. It's us. More specifically, it's the tools we think we have for figuring people out, and they're basically all broken. Let's jump into the first big mistake we make. All right, mistake number 1, we assume people are telling the truth. Our brains are basically hardwired to believe, not to doubt. Gladwell calls this truth default theory, and it means that our default setting, our go-to assumption, is that people are being honest. And on one hand, this is totally necessary, right? Imagine if you questioned every single thing everyone said all day. Nothing would ever get done. Society would just stop. So it's efficient, but, and this is a huge but, it has a massive dark side. It leaves us wide open to being deceived. Okay, want to see this in action? Look at this guy, Aldrich Ames, a top-level CIA officer. His job was literally to stop Soviet spies. His colleagues, they thought he was kind of a mess, a lazy drunk. But a traitor? A spy for the other side? No way. That was completely unthinkable to them. They were defaulting to truth, assuming he was on their team, all while he was selling them out. And it's the same exact thing with Bernie Madoff. We have this image in our heads of what a liar looks like. Shifty eyes, sweating, nervous. Madoff was the total opposite. He was calm, he was confident, he didn't fit the picture. So even seasoned experts met him and thought, yeah, this guy's legit. Their brains just defaulted back to truth. Okay, so that's mistake number 1. Now for mistake number 2, which is just as dangerous. It's this idea that what you see on the outside is a perfect reflection of what's happening on the inside. Gladwell calls it the myth of transparency, the belief that people are like open books. And there's probably no better or more heartbreaking example of this than the case of Amanda Knox. So here's what happened. The police, the media, everyone, they had an expectation of how an innocent, grieving roommate should behave. Crying, right? Devastated. But what they saw from Amanda Knox was not that at all. They saw her kissing her boyfriend. They saw her doing cartwheels. She even put on those little shoe covers at the crime scene and said, ta-da! Her behavior was completely mismatched with what they expected to see. And this is the key. This is where it all went wrong. The investigators made a giant leap. They assumed her weird behavior was her inner state. They didn't see a scared, quirky, maybe immature kid who had no idea how to react to trauma. No, they saw a cold-blooded killer. They thought she was being transparent. So we've got these 2 huge flaws in how we judge people as individuals. But what happens when you take those flaws and build them into our systems, into our courts, our police forces? Well, the results are, frankly, they're staggering. Okay, get this. Researchers set up this amazing bake-off, experienced New York City judges versus a computer. The judges got the whole picture, right? They could look the defendant in the eye, hear their story, use all that human intuition and experience. The computer? It only got 2 bits of info, the person's age and their criminal record. That's it. The challenge? Who's better at guessing who's safe to release on bail? And the whole thing boiled down to one number. Yeah, the computer was 25% better at the job. The people the algorithm picked were way less likely to commit another crime. I mean, just let that sink in for a second. All that extra stuff the judges had, the face-to-face meeting, the story, it didn't just not help. It actually made their decisions worse. So this leads to a really, really uncomfortable question, doesn't it? We always say we want to meet someone in person to get a feel for them, to size them up. But what if that's actually the worst thing we can do? What if all that face-to-face stuff is just noise that makes us get it wrong?
Okay, so if our instincts are this bad, what do we do? And this is where Gladwell's book takes a really interesting turn. He says the answer is not to try and get better at reading people. It's not about becoming a better lie detector or mind reader. We need to change the entire game.
And to make his point, he uses a really powerful and sober example: suicide. What you're seeing here is that how likely a suicide attempt is to be fatal depends hugely on the method. It's often less about how determined the person is in that moment and more about how lethal the tool they have at hand is. The context matters a lot. And that right there is the big idea. Stop focusing on the person and start focusing on the context, on the world around them. For example, back in the day, Britain used a really toxic gas for heating homes. When they switched to a much less lethal natural gas, the suicide rate plummeted. They didn't change the people, they just changed the context. And that's what made the difference. So let's wrap this all up. What's the big takeaway here? It's that we need to stop trying to be human lie detectors because we're terrible at it. Instead, we need a dose of humility. We need to accept that people aren't transparent, open books. We need to remember that our default is to believe people, and that can make us vulnerable. At the end of the day, it's about being cautious and understanding the limits of what we can possibly know about another person. And that leaves us with one last, kind of provocative thought to chew on. If we accept that we're just fundamentally bad at reading strangers, should we even keep trying? Or maybe the goal should be to build systems and a society that don't rely on us being good at it in the first place.